Hi, welcome to Loft 801. My name is Diego, and today I'm talking about Hamnet, which is one of those movies that resonated with me emotionally. This is a film that I was already pretty interested because if you know me, then I am a sucker for period pieces, especially if it has that old world medieval adjacent Shakespearean grimy English countryside kind of atmosphere. Hamnet absolutely delivered on that for me. This is a deeply emotional film, but it's not just sad for the sake of being sad. It's sorrowful, it's intimate, it's very human, and it's really about grief, memory, family, and the way that art can come out of pain. I thought this movie was beautiful. I thought it was wonderfully acted, and most of all, I thought it had a lot of heart. I would love to own a steelbook version of this. Quick heads up, this review will contain spoilers. Sorry, not sorry. So, Hamnet tells a fictionalized emotional story centered around Agnes and William Shakespeare, and more specifically around the tragedy of losing their son, Hamnet, and how that grief ripples through their marriage, their family, and eventually the art that William creates. What I really appreciated about this movie is that it doesn't feel like one of those dry historical dramas where you're just admiring costumes and listening to people speak in old-timey language. It actually feels alive, it feels emotional, it feels tactile, and it feels like these are real people living inside of grief and memory and love. And one of the things that I like most is the idea at the center of it, the story behind the art. The idea that one of the most famous works ever created, Hamlet, could be tied so intimately to personal loss. That was such an interesting angle to me because it's not something that I had ever thought of in this emotional way. This movie takes that concept and it gives it real feeling. I'll get to the meat and potatoes of that, but right out of the gate, one of the biggest strengths of this movie is how immersive it felt for me. I bought into this world completely. The production design is fantastic, the costumes are fantastic, the houses, the woods, the streets, the interiors, the textures of everything. It all feels lived in. Nothing felt fake to me, nothing felt overtly polished, nothing felt like a set dressed up to look historical. It actually felt like I was stepping into this version of Shakespearean England. And that matters a lot for a movie like this because if I don't buy into the world, then I'm not going to connect with these characters as strongly, as emotionally as I should. But here, I absolutely did. I believed every garden, every outfit, every room, every path through the woods. I was fully immersed in this setting and that really elevated the emotional power of the film for me. Also, and I think this is something that I genuinely think helped this movie, both the leads look like they belong in this world. They don't have that overly modern, plastic, cosmetically polished look that makes them feel out of place in a period piece. They feel natural in the world of the film, they feel grounded, they feel human, and I think that helps a lot more than people sometimes realize. The emotional backbone of this movie is absolutely the performances, especially Jessie Buckley as Agnes and Paul Mescal as William. Jessie Buckley is phenomenal in this movie, absolutely phenomenal. She is the heart of the film in so many ways, and I think a huge reason why Hamnet works as well as it does emotionally is because of what she brings to Agnes. There's such a quiet, emotional intelligence to her performance. She conveys grief, longing, tenderness, spiritual sensitivity, maternal love, and devastation in a way that never feels forced. It feels raw and it feels real. I was incredibly impressed with the range of emotions that she showed here. There are scenes where she says so much with barely saying anything at all, and then there are other moments where her pain feels so overwhelming and present that it just takes over the screen. I really do think she is the absolute standout of this movie and she fully deserved her Oscar win. Paul Mescal is also really good. I don't think his performance is quite as strong as Jessie Buckley's, but I do think he still does a great job. What I appreciated most about his portrayal is how restrained it is. William is not grieving in the same outward emotionally open way that Agnes is, and Mescal plays that distance well. He feels like someone who doesn't know how to hold the weight of what has happened except by disappearing back into his work, into ambition, into writing, into creation. For me, that contrast between them is what becomes one of the most interesting aspects of the movie. I especially like it because I think that's how I tend to process life too. If I'm happy, I'm gonna work. If I'm mad, I'm gonna work. And if I'm sad, I'm gonna work. Working gives me comfort, so if I stop working, it gives me anxiety, and I feel like my life is going down the drain. I have a lot of pride in my work, and it's a big part of my identity, so seeing how William grieved with his work completely resonated with me. In a lot of ways, it reminded me of Gustav Borg from Sentimental Value. In fact, Hamnet and Sentimental Value have a lot of similar themes. To me, this is where Hamnet also really becomes special. At its core, this is a movie about grief, but more importantly, it's about how grief can fracture people even when they love each other deeply. Agnes and William grieve in completely different ways. Agnes feels everything emotionally and spiritually. She is connected to the natural world, to memory, to presence, to absence. William, on the other hand, internalizes it and channels it into his work. He creates, he buries himself in what he can do, and the film shows how those two grief languages don't coexist peacefully. They create distance, they create silence, and they create pain. I thought that was one of the most haunting things in this movie. The way that grief doesn't just hurt because someone is gone, it also changes the people who are left behind. It changes marriages, it changes families, and it changes the shape of a home. And yet, even with how sad this movie is, I never felt like it was hopeless. That's something I really appreciated. It wasn't just miserable for the sake of being miserable. It understands pain, but it also understands healing. It understands that grief is real and ugly and long-lasting, but it also understands that there can be light after loss. There can still be reconciliation, there can still be beauty, there can still be laughter, there can still be art. I love how the film ultimately shows William taking this unimaginable personal tragedy and turning it into something beautiful. Something that keeps Hamnet alive forever in a different form. That idea didn't just hit his wife Agnes, it hit me. The idea that art can become a vessel for love and grief and memory is incredibly powerful. I also have to talk about the child performance here because I was incredibly impressed. Jacobi Jupe as Hamnet is fantastic. Honestly, he gives one of the best child performances I've ever seen in a movie. He doesn't feel like a kid reading lines, he feels like a real child. He feels natural, like he's emotionally present. He feels playful and loving and vulnerable in a way that makes the character land so much harder. And that matters because if Hamnet doesn't feel real, then the entire movie collapses. That bond between Hamnet and Judith, the tenderness in the family dynamic, the innocence, the warmth, that all works because his performance works. He gives the movie a soul in a different way than Jessie Buckley does. Her performance grounds the grief, but his performance makes you understand what was lost. And that is a huge reason for why this movie hurts as much as it does. I teared up and my girlfriend teared up. I think chloezhao made this a very visually beautiful movie. This is a very painterly movie. It has that kind of visual softness and naturalism that makes certain frames feel like they could just be hung on a wall. But it's not just beauty without purpose. The visuals intensify the emotional experience. I really loved how the film focuses on nature, forests, birds, fields, light, movement through space. There's something very emotional about the way nature is used in this movie. It gives the film a sense of spirituality without over-explaining itself. There are also specific visual moments that I thought were very strong. One that really stood out to me is when William is saying goodbye to his son and how they're framed across the corners of the house. It's those kinds of choices that intensify the emotion without needing dialogue to spell everything out. That's something that I always appreciate in movies like this, when filmmaking itself is doing emotional work. It's not just the script telling you to feel sad. It's the framing, the movement, the distance between the bodies, the use of space, the way memory and grief almost seem to haunt the image itself. I thought the movie did that all beautifully. The soundtrack in this movie is also incredible. I absolutely love the music here, and of course, one of the big highlights is On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. It's one of those songs that immediately carries emotional weight the second you hear it. That piece is gorgeous, it's powerful, it's aching, it's tender, and it fits this movie so well. It's an iconic track that I've seen in so many edits of Oscar nominees. Sinners, Sentimental Value, Frankenstein, Train Dreams, and Arco. It creates this emotional atmosphere that feels both personal and universal at the same time. And in Hamnet, it helps elevate the sensory experience of the movie. It adds to that feeling that this is not just a story that you're witnessing, but something that you're sitting with emotionally. So the music, the visuals, the performances, they all come together beautifully to make a wonderful movie. Overall, I really liked Hamnet. This is the kind of movie that reminds me why I love period pieces so much when they're done well. It's immersive, emotional, beautifully acted, visually stunning, and thematically rich. Jessie Buckley is incredible. Paul Mescal is very strong. Jacobi Jupe is fantastic as Hamnet. The production design and costumes completely pulled me into the world, and chloezhao gives this film this gorgeous painterly quality, and the soundtrack adds so much emotional weight. More than anything though, I appreciated how human this movie feels. It understands grief, it understands family, and it understands the pain of losing someone and the way people can drift apart in that pain. But it also understands that there is still hope on the other side of sorrow. There is still art, there is still memory, there is still life. And I think that's what makes Hamnet so affecting. This is absolutely a movie that I would love to own as a steelbook, so please put it on a shelf. I will grab it immediately. For me, Hamnet is a beautiful, haunting, deeply human film that turns grief into something something tender and unforgettable. Thank you for listening to my review of Hamnet. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and hit subscribe. If you did not enjoy the video, thank you for sticking around. As always, I would love to read what you have to say, so leave a comment and let me know what you're thinking. Also, if there's something you want to see reviewed, don't forget to let me know and I will do my best to get to it. Lastly, if you want to see some more from me, then you can check out my vlogs linked up above or my podcast, Good Friends. Again, thank you for watching. My name is Diego and I will see you next time.